you got to think to yourself, you're getting started in sales, you're like an L1. And the thing is, think about how successful your L1 would be without knowledge-based articles and standard operating procedures. You are setting them up to fail. But if you work with, partners or peer group or, like insert whichever peer group or content, like there's Robin Robbins out there. There are thought leaders in this space about business development. And I think anything is better than you trying to reinvent the wheel.
Hey guys, Damien Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I get the pleasure of interviewing Matthew Held, who is the CEO of Manawa Networks. What I realized as I was listening to Matthew's story is I thought I wanted to become a top MSP. And as I realized that he had to throw out his entire business model, how he had multiple different business partners that didn't want to make the arduous climb to the top, and then how he had to reinvent himself to understand what sales and marketing and business development really means and humble himself to learn those lessons, I started to question, am I willing to put in that kind of work to get where he got? If you want to understand what it took and what you might have to do to build an MSP like his, don't miss out on our conversation today. So Matthew, you started Manawa in a really interesting way and also in a pretty challenging time. Tell me about that.
Yeah, we started Manawa. I'm going to say that the idea of Manawa started in 2007. We incorporated in February 2008, right before the great financial crisis. So perfect time to start a business.
Right.
And these stories, it's funny. It's like any movie or, show, but 3 founders in a garage. In this case, it was my parents' basement. And it was 3 young guys with a vision about how we were going to right the wrongs of what we thought of what we perceived to be in the small business IT space.
Mm. And so what is this idea that you guys originally had, Uber for IT?
Yeah, so when we initially started, we called it our associate model. So effectively, the easiest way I can say is we were Uber for small business IT before Uber existed. Okay. So we were effectively a platform play to link independent IT consultants that serve the small and mid-sized business market with those small and mid-sized businesses, right? That SMB market. And we found that there was just this was righting the wrong. Was we wanted to just help both parties. Mm-hmm. One was we felt there was a lack of standardization in experience that clients would have because unlike other professions, like in engineering professions, there's a governing body that makes sure that you're licensed and competent. Legal, accounting. IT, you can just show up and hang your shingle and say that you're an expert, and as long as you know a little bit more than the client, at least in that space in particular, people will work with you there. On the associate front or the independent consultant front, I before starting Manawa, I had my own independent consulting practice, and I had my own challenges of having enough credit to procure equipment. Didn't really have a brand. It was all relationship based. And so in order to be able to scale in today's world of IT, and even going back then, things were getting more and more complicated. So, you could be a deep generalist, but still not have the breadth of knowledge to be able to accomplish everything that a client might need.
Sure.
So for us, it was a way of creating a safe way for independent consultants to be able to collaborate with each other and I can say deliver a great experience for their clients. So yeah, that's how we put it all together.
So it's an interesting idea. Why did you decide that business model? Why did you jump in and before pre-Uber? Now it may be easy to understand as Uber.
Uber didn't exist. It was how do we create a network of independent IT guys that can work with each other, and we take away sort of the pain points.
Yeah, well, I'm curious what drove you to do that.
I'm going to say the pain of running my own, like when I was doing consulting, to be fair, I started in IT when I was 16. at TV Ontario, which is a public broadcaster here in Ontario, Canada. And then started my own consulting practice when I was 18. And that was running while I was in school, in university. I had to have trusted people that I could go to, that were in, I'm going to say in my network, that I'd be able to trust and work with, and not worry about them stealing clients or any of that effect. So in what we created initially, there were rules of engagement, so that, you couldn't poach somebody else's clients, that type of thing. So sort of working within the network and creating a structure took away a lot of those pains, let alone the branding. So people would all show up wearing the same shirts and the same, so there's continuity of experience. So it was like a force multiplier for the independent consultants.
Yeah.
And then on the client side, we committed to a certain level of quality and something like a larger entity that was standing behind those independent consultants. So we're trying to just, raise the bar as we're going through that. So that was, I'm going to say, the dream and the vision behind it.
It's a really cool and really unusual way to start, because I know when I was IT kind of doing some consulting, it was just, I still had the trust issues. Who do I bring in? Because I don't know all the things and I can't do all the things. But I didn't have rules of engagement. I didn't have people showing up with the same shirt. Right? That was a whole different level that you put into that.
Yeah. And even from the comp model, like we did effectively, there's a commission structure where, and we'd even built, our own, I'm going to say, custom CRM and billing management platform at that time, because we couldn't find anything that could do what we wanted to do, which looked at, what role you held in a transaction. Were you an account manager? Did you own that client relationship? Were you a project manager coordinating multiple resources, or are you fulfilling a technician type role? So we actually, when we'd go to invoice or bill out a client, an individual's compensation was driven based on the role they took place on, on the transaction. And they could be all three, or they could just be one, right? Just helping out and getting for that. So yeah, so we, it was a way to try and solve that there. And then the company, Manawa Corporate, retaining a portion of the proceeds to be able to take care of the branding and insurance and all the business stuff necessary to run the company.
It's really interesting. Hey guys, Damien here. As I continue to interview the top MSPs in the world, one thing has become incredibly clear. It's time that we let go. Even more than that, every time I focus on my zone of genius and get out of the way and do the very few things I'm good at and delegate to others, I'm ready for that next level of growth. So if you're ready for that next level of growth, one way that I could help you is with Servosity. We co-manage your backups and disaster recovery so you can focus on what you do best, let us do the rest, and then what we do is we test the backups every single day so you never have to worry. If you'd like to learn more, click the link below. So how long did you run with that model?
I'm going to say 2008 until 2015, approximately.
Okay. Why did you change?
Not growing at the rate we wanted to. And I'm going to say, like, managing. So there's sort of multiple factors. But managing multiple IT guys, or IT people, I should say, is a lot like herding cats. Like, it's just, and so you've got these independent contractors that each have their own lives, want to set their own schedule. They've chosen this way of life because it suits the way they want to operate.
Right,
and now we're trying to wrap, we're trying to wrap some structure around that. And so, I remember a new lead had come in, and it was for a law firm. And so we, in downtown Toronto, and we go in and, we had all the technical capability to deliver. One of the gentlemen didn't show up branded for whatever reason. And then the question from one of the partners was, well, what's his relationship with you? Why is he here? He's not wearing the same. Is he a consultant? Is he this? And, being forthright and transparent. Well, yeah, he's, right? We're independent consultants. And that just opened a can of worms of, how do we know that you're going to be able to deliver? How do we know that you can dictate what our service experience is going to be like, et cetera? But I'll say that was a decent sized law firm, right? So as we started moving up market, not having the structure became a challenge. And we kept on moving up market. So I'm going to say the decision was made at some point, I'm going to say in around 2015, that we really need to, I'm going to say, start our own internal thing. And I'll add, one of our clients at the time, venture capital firm, and I remember sitting in on a meeting. We'd actually brought two of our clients together at the time, because one was looking for funding, the other one was the other one was a VC. And I remember sitting in one of those meetings. Yeah, exactly. Well, look, you look to create win-win scenarios for everybody. And I remember sitting in that meeting, in that boardroom, and the partner at the VC had said, "If you don't own your customer, you don't own your future." And that really resonated with me, thinking about, with the associate model, yes, there's account manager, it's their client. They leave. Is the client going to stay with us, or are they going to move on? And I'll use the medical analogy. You've got a doctor that you like that is operating in a medical practice. They decide to move across town. Do you follow the doctor, or do you keep at the practice because they've got the lab there and the wellness specialist there and all of the extra accoutrement of see some of these modern medical practices? Well, it's a fuzzy area.
Yeah,
it's a fuzzy area. So we started down the path of building that internal team. It initially started in 2015, approximately, and it started with, I'm going to say, a service manager and a junior service desk guy. And we started bringing on our own, I'm going to say, our own customers where it made sense.
Was there a deliberate plan to say, hey, we're going to do away with this associate model by this date or time, or was it, we need to own the customers and let's just start chipping away at it?
Because we're trying to effectively bootstrap a new company within a company.
Right.
So it's like we're a startup within the startup. And so it took some time. It took some time to, get enough critical mass. And, we still, what worked out well is we've really tried to create a hybrid model between the two models, where internal resources could support the associates for technical items and whatnot. And we could go in on opportunities together and work on opportunities together. But eventually what happened, and I'm going to say, is we let the associate model unwind in an organic way. So there was no hard set date that things had to change by. And I'll say again, associates being independent, some of them decided that they were wanted to switch things up or do a side gig or whatnot. So because we also had I'd have to look into our agreements, and this is going back so many years now, but I think in our agreements it was you will operate effectively as us. You don't get the benefits of us, but then get to run a side gig.
Yeah.
You leveraging the benefits, but not billing through us. So.
Right. So what was I can't imagine, right? A startup within a startup. What was the main challenge, as you were trying to build that out and make that transition?
Well, look, at the end of the day, and this is I think a challenge for any technical, person with a technical background, it's business development. And, in hindsight, and this is looking back at the associate model and thinking why didn't that scale at the rate that we wanted to? I think a lot of it had to do with, lack of explicit focus on business development. And the Pareto distribution, or the 80-20 rule, and it just seems to show up everywhere in life for some reason. And maybe that's just because that's what you look for. Right. But in that case there, we found that about 20% of the associates, so those independent consultants, really had a strong entrepreneurial tech knack, so that they could have those conversations, build business. And on the flip side, the 80% were much more technically oriented, and they were always looking for more opportunity. So I think, if we had really doubled or tripled down on new business development and had cracked that code, I think that would have been a different outcome. But the organic growth we were seeing, we started moving up markets. All of a sudden, we started needing more structure, and to us, it was just it was a more logical thing to pivot at that point in time, let alone own the customer,
Sure,
and have control over the future.
So the Uber for IT, right? There's more to it than that, but the platform play that you built, really interesting. Not something I can relate to. What I very much can relate to is a technical guy that didn't put enough effort, and maybe still hasn't put enough effort into business development. So how did you try to start? I want to grow faster. We're not growing fast enough. What did you do first? How did you start to grapple with that?
Well, I'll say, a lot of it had to do with, I'll say that the way that at the point that we were starting to pivot, at that point, just to give some context to the listeners, we started with 3 guys. One of the guys had a software engineering and computer engineering background. He was the one who wrote that custom platform. He had left the organization to go pursue greater ambitions down in Silicon Valley, and I'm going to say live out that dream. Mm-hmm. And so he had exited the business. So it was myself and the remaining partner, and we were the 2 that really had the 2 independent consulting businesses that we had brought together at that point. And so we sort of ran the business, including the in-house, I'm going to say, accounts, where we owned all aspects of that, and I was handling it, effectively the admin of the business. So it depended on whose client, we were looking after. If it was client A, it might have been mine. If it was client B, it might have been his. And so we went down that path of, I'm going to say, just running the business in that sense. And so our growth tended to be very organic at that point. There was no explicit focus on sales, a lot of referrals, and so that we pursued that. In early 2017, again, and I'll just to give context to the listeners, at that point in time, our service manager, we didn't have a PSA. We didn't have, we had a siloed ticketing system. We had a siloed billing platform. There were all these siloed applications that, tend to get converged into PSAs today. Mm-hmm. And our service manager submitted his resignation to go move on to, another opportunity. And the decision at that point in time was, well, he was sort of keeping everything on track and in alignment. He said, well, are we going to invest in a PSA, or are we going to hire another service manager? And we invested in a PSA, and then we also joined a peer group. And through that peer group and that framework, I'm going to say, for operating an IT business, we really built the PSA around that, and the structure around that. Again, to say, here's the foundation, here's how we're going to operate. We're all, singing by the same song sheet, so to speak, within the organization, and then started to grow from there. And that was, starting to say the genesis of really when we started focusing on business development.
About how many people did you have then?
Hard to call, but under 10 for sure. We were probably 7, 8, at that point in time. I'm going to guess 7, 8, 9. And I just want to call out that, it was our first peer group meeting, and we're still a part of that, group. And the gentleman, the people in that group had said, look, by the time we meet again next quarter, one of you guys has got to figure out who's handling sales and who's handling ops. This whole managing a book of business, it's just confusing for your team. Yeah. So I can remember very specifically, the exact moment when the decision is that my, former partner, was going to be handling sales, and I then by chance, was going to be running ops. So that's when the focus started, I'll say, where there was like a structured approach.
Yeah. It's funny how that kind of breakthrough, that aha moment can happen when you get clear about who's responsible for which. What's the peer group in the framework?
So we're a member of multiple peer groups at this point. But at the time, that was True Methods and their Winner Circle. I'm going to say, peer group that we were doing. So we started following the True Methods framework, and then implemented and worked with a Winner Circle group for that.
Okay. I don't know, 7, 8 people, whatever you were then. And then you and your partner decided one's ops, that's you, sales. Then what happened?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say that happened in January of 18 at our first peer group meeting. Started down that path. Partner, had some things going on in his personal life. So I'm going to say there was a degree of distraction going on there. And so there was I'm going to say the focus, wasn't there, and understandably so. Like, we all have stuff going on in our respective lives. When I'm going to say that distraction wrapped itself up, we ended up getting into COVID, and then COVID became a challenge. So, I'm going to say, like, it was a lot of, as I said to, my former partner, I remember saying this, we were sitting at the lounge, the Amex Centurion lounge over a glass of wine in Philadelphia. Okay. And I remember saying to him, I said, if you're going to handle sales, you're going out into what I'm going to call the great unknown. Mm-hmm. Neither of us has got a sales background. We're both technically oriented. His background, I'm going to say, would lend itself, and his persona would have lended itself more towards that sales background. I had more enterprise IT experience. When I was running my independent consulting practice, I was working with large organizations and multinationals, sub companies or divisions of multinationals. So I had that experience. So it was the logical choice. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, you're going down the great unknown, and I'm just going to have a ton of work to do. Right? Like, just really mature and implement the framework and get things running as well as humanly possible. Mm-hmm. So we're both going to go, pedal the metal, full steam ahead. I'll build up ops and build up the company. You build out the customer need, and we're going to somehow meet in the middle in the future, type of thing. So it was just a very, very much head down type of thing.
Mm-hmm. And so, was that the thing that caused it to work? I mean, what happened next?
Well, I'm going to say we matured considerably in terms, I'm going to say on the ops front, maturity went up, the framework definitely helped us not reinvent the wheel, and just expedited, that growth and that maturity. On the sales front, I'm going to say because there wasn't that focus for some period of time, it was, again, more organic growth and whatnot. And then COVID happened. And at the time of COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty for everybody. I mean, we were working with, and we continue to work with, a strategic planning coach that loosely follows like Gazelles and EOS. And I remember, he'll get us to do quarterly plans, annual plans, and 3-year plans. Now we were making 30, 60, 90-day plans. Mm. It was just, we can't see further out than 3 months. Because that's the world that we were living in.
Yeah.
So, we continued to grow, but again, we didn't have necessarily the rate of growth that we want to have happen. So even with that focus, because again, it's, the light bulb moment, I'm going to say, for me, shortcutting this was, and working with some of the awesome coaches, I've had the fortune of working with. One of the sales coaches, that talked about the importance of a sales process. So it's not that you do sales activities, but it's a process. Mm-hmm. And until you get that process in place, because the sales cycles are so long, it's an uphill battle.
You're just throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Pretty much.
Yeah.
So, and some of it will stick when you take that approach.
Right.
But you don't have as much control over the outcome. And I'm going to say, like, it's a lot easier to plan a business when you have a sales pipeline.
Right.
Right. And you can look out in the future and know what you're going to expect, what you're going to land, and what you need to do from like a resourcing perspective. And,
yeah, absolutely. So, I guess if we fast forward to now, what's different? What's working? What have you learned about you need business development?
I mean, I'll say, a couple of things. Like, first off, it depends on where you are in the market and what type of business you're, like MSP, you're running. Because we really focus on being proactive. I'm going to call, as I say to prospects and clients, we're in the fire prevention business, not the firefighting business. And so really we have to get very targeted and very explicit about the types of clients that we want to work with. And that also that want and need that. I'm sure we've all seen that in the market. We've all got clients, or have had clients that are in the mindset of, well, IT is just an expense. You end up on, and I'm going to steal, a couple of lines here, but you end up, on the income statement as being, next under SG&A, next to the guys that are watering the plants. Like those aren't the types of clients that we look to work with.
Right.
Look to work with organizations that look at IT and see that as a strategic differentiator and a competitive advantage, and a way of managing risk. So, I'm going to say that mindset and that frame, and then building a process to support finding those clients has really been critical to us.
So how have you done that? Because I think we all want those people. We always want the people that actually value that. And you said process. So because again, I think it's one thing to say, let me just ask some questions and see if they treat us as a pure expense versus strategic advantage. But I'm curious, like, where are you in that process of building that process?
Well, I mean, look, I'm going to say first off, it's ongoing. But if you look at if I look in our peer group or of the companies that have really grown and got to the point of exiting, or getting rolled up into another organization. And when I talk about that, not because that should be the end goal necessarily, but that's where that's where additional value has been created, right? An opportunity for the team members, because of the rate at which they're able to grow and the resources they get access to. But if I think about the way we've gone about that, I mean, it's a bit of a loaded question. I mean, I'll start with saying it was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of facing the unknown, because that was not, I was able to do consultative sales, and I'd done that in my consulting practice even prior to starting this business. But turning sales into a process that was disciplined, where we had a repeatable outcome, that took a lot of effort. And just being aware of this, sales cycle times and keeping in touch with people, like and how having the belief in what you're able to deliver as an MSP, and having the conviction behind it. Also, be willing to say no.
There's a lot you just said there.
Yeah, well, it's like, because I think that if I think about our journey, there was certainly a long period of time where the mindset was one more of scarcity when it came to business development.
Sure.
As opposed to abundance or having the conviction of knowing we have a great process, we get particular results, for our clients. And when we're talking to a prospect, really figuring out, do you need the results that we get? If you just need reactive IT, we're probably not the right fit. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
How did you go from that scarcity mindset to abundance mindset?
Well, I mean, a lot of inner reflection, working with coaches. I've had the fortune of a great team that, delivers great results. And so when you start seeing the team deliver that, right, and that maturity is there, that gives you a lot of confidence, I say, in the business development side of things. Like I regularly now, if I'm on a call and somebody's complaining about response time, let's just say, Like I'll literally just share my screen into Teams to our dashboard, ops dashboard, and I'll just say, look, here's like our latest numbers. And I can just show them.
Yeah.
And then just like, it just speaks for itself, right? Like I think it's one thing, everybody's heard the term fake it till you make it. I think when you're faking it till you make it, it's you put on that brave face. It's kind of like fake smiling, when you're not really joyful and you need to take that picture and it's just people look at that smile and like, I'm not seeing the creases in the eyes or whatever
right.
I'm not the body language expert, but it's not that kind of inherent wisdom and knowledge that you've got that, we are delivering on our promises and we are getting those results and we are having an impact, significant impact on our clients' businesses. So,
So, are you still owning the operation and your partner still owning the sales now?
Well, I mean, that's a large conversation. We got to the point of recognizing, so partner, and when I brought this up earlier, it said former partner. So we had gone through the process of parting ways. A lot of what was driving that, drove that was just a lack of getting the results that we needed in terms of business development.
Sure.
And, I'm going to say from my perspective, we had both culturally for the team, my own ability to, where I was working crazy hours, doing everything I could to, field of dreams, build it and they will come. The baseball players weren't walking through the cornrows to play yet.
Yeah.
And, I was, a combination of I was tapping out and I could see that there was a degree of frustration with the team because there was always, the deals were always, they're going to be coming. They're going to be coming. At some point in time, the faith has to be like the promise of the future has to materialize. Otherwise you start losing people. And so, my former partner and I, we had to have some really tough conversations around that. And I mean, I want to give some context to this. I went to high school with his wife. I'd known him for 20 plus years.
Oh, wow.
We'd worked together. Like there was a lot there. And I had no ill will, around him as an individual, but we had to get results for the business.
Sure.
And, when we talked about swapping roles, I'm going to say that was a bit of a non-starter. I talked to some team members and they weren't about, hey, how would you feel if we were to, swap things up? Some team members weren't really thrilled with that idea. And so, at the end, it was sort of a lot of the discussions surfaced around how do we preserve the most amount of value for everybody? And how, was he and his family, like how could we part ways in an amicable way where he and his family are whole and set up to take the next chapter in their lives, or the next chapter in his life and then by proxy, his family members. And how do we sort of, I'm going to say, improve the culture and improve the results that we're getting in the business. So
I know from experience partnerships, it's not easy. There's at a certain scale, one of us may not be cut out for it. And that may be me. Maybe I can lead to this area, but I can't lead at this next season. So I think that's far more common than people realize. What really struck me, Matthew, is I think so many people, even when I was leading a smaller company, I go, well, I own the company, right? I can do whatever I want. Not that I would ever be flippant to my team, but there's, I think, a lot of people outside looking in, and then maybe the earlier version of me would have said, we can just swap roles. But I love the maturity to say, what do you think? Asking your team. And I think that speaks a lot in volumes about you and your culture and your mindset, because your team was able to kind of realize that's probably not going to work. And when you're running a smaller entity, you may not have that, that insight and that. But I also would say that's fairly rare that you would ask for that insight, because I think there's a lot of us who go, hey, we're just going to do this because this isn't working. We're going to flip roles and there you go, without involving the team. So I think that's amazing insights that you would listen, and especially in such a sensitive topic, right? Because I don't know about you, but a lot of the team wasn't around when you guys started it or that kind of thing.
Yeah. I want to parry off of that, actually, because I think there's some wisdom in the experience that we had when we were working through this. So that business coach had said to us, we were, I'm going to say, we're sort of going through like business partner marriage counseling. Mm-hmm. And he was so gracious to help facilitate that and help us understand our respective roles and how that was. And I'm going to say that I think, and this is sort of just something I think for the listeners, especially the owners out there, to think about, that are active participants in the business. You can't confuse your owner hat with your operational hat. Mm-hmm. So I was an owner and then CEO. My former partner was an owner and president of sales and marketing. And I think, what was evident was it's easy in the ownership role to put your owner cap on and abdicate responsibility for getting results. Yeah. Or feel that, well, I've got control, I don't have to. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you only had that CEO hat on, or you only had that sales and marketing hat on, and you were hired to get results, ownership would not tolerate a lack of results. No. All right. So it's mixing that up, and why, I bring that back to is, because you mentioned the point about engaging the team. At our size of organization, I really feel like like we're looking to create a very high performing team. Mm-hmm. And the team is the key word there. Mm. Like I'm facilitate the leadership CEO role as part of a team. Yes. So like we couldn't get where we are if we didn't have really dedicated, committed individuals that operate as part of a team, right? And provide part of that, and have a sense of ownership in the outcome. So how did you go from a guy that ran the Uber for IT, wherein everybody's a consultant, nobody works for you, or it just seems to be one end of that spectrum where you're like, it's not that we don't care, it's just that, you're not part of this team, right? A very loosely held, a little bit arm's length relationship to it is the team. I am part of the team. The team is the difference. Like, I couldn't agree more with the current, but how do you make such a transformation? Yeah. I'm going to say a lot of reading, a lot of mentors, a lot of being open-minded, mm-hmm. and just, I don't know, a drive and a desire to succeed. Like, it's a different structure, so it needs a different approach. Fundamentally, I mean, just recognizing that and driving towards that. That's ultimately what it boils down to. How do you do that? I mean, I don't know. And I think, look, I'm going to say to a lot of the owners, they're there, especially if you're an entrepreneur and owner, you've started a business, you're probably quite adaptable, and you are likely, you've been the head admin person, the head legal person, the head HR person. Yeah. You've held just about every role in your organization. So you're adaptable. Well, that means that you have to improve your leadership skills. Mm. So, coaching, a lot of coaching on my end. And that's where peer, I'm going to say, was really critical. Not just even for my direct peers, but even the broader people in the peer group. Mm-hmm. Because I made relationships with other with other organizations, other people that were leading in other groups, and companies that were significantly larger than us, to be able to sort of see around the corner and what does it look like, not when you're 21 people, but when you're 50 people, when you're 60 people, when you're 100 people. Right. Because you have very different challenges at that point. Right. So if you can see ahead the corner and then position yourself appropriately to, I'm going to say, avoid those pitfalls, don't reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Don't make all the mistakes firsthand. Yeah. Well, it's the thing about wisdom. It's what you get after you needed it. So let's try and learn from somebody else.
Well said. What do you attribute to your growth? Like, you've come a long way from 6 or 7 employees. You've taken me through this journey. There's been so many lessons. But I'm kind of curious if you attribute this area or that area more to the growth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. If I think about like just me as an individual, I've generally succeeded at everything that I've put my mind to. And it's just a relentless tenacity and an open-mindedness to growing. So, and not having, I'll also say it, not having an ego that would stop me from learning from people who have done this before or wise people.
Yeah. I think that third one's probably the more rare of the 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like most IT people get to be prima donnas at one point in time in their career, right? So, yeah, I would actually say that if I look, when I've interacted with, IT people in the market, I tend to find the ones with the really strong personalities that seem to think that they know everything. I don't know. They tend not to be working together in a large organization. They tend to be smaller in size. So it's kind of like, I don't know, drop the ego, be an eager learner, and put your back into it.
Put your back into it. Get out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So breaking that down further, I want to go back to what you said earlier, which is we weren't happy with our growth. And we had a business development issue. And I know your partner raised his hand, said, that'll be me. Now you're in a spot where you don't have a partner. So who leads the business development, and what was the next rung in that, climbing that ladder?
So, I mean, I took on the business development hat. I've been very fortunate that we have a director of operations that is extremely capable, and she puts her heart and soul, into the business and its outcome. So it really allowed me to focus on growing and creating a business development team, like an process. So, at first it was taking something that existed that was broken because, through the period of time where there was effort put forth, but we weren't getting, the results that we wanted. We had gone through several CRMs. So, we're throwing, I think you'd made the term, we're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what was sticking.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, it's kind of like when we made the decision to get a PSA. Like we moved ourselves over to HubSpot, for example, which is a beast. Yeah. But just like when we moved over to, we run ConnectWise Manage. Now, when we started running Manage, it's a beast. But if you figure it out and you create the structure that you want in it, it will help keep those guide rails on and help make sure the process takes place. So, then we did the same thing with HubSpot. We implemented HubSpot, but I will tell you, when I had to start running it, it was a mishmash and a mess, and it needed a lot of TLC.
Yeah.
Right. So, and on top of it, I'll say that in general, we find our sales cycle tends to be quite long. If we think about the nature of, the relationship that we have with our clients, if we are trusted partners, and it's a critical function, and a lot of organizations don't want to make a change unless something's broken. Mm-hmm. I use the analogy, we was talking about the doctor analogy, right? Of if a doctor was to move across town, would you follow them? Type of thing. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't have the best doctor, if a new doctor was to call you up or send you an email and say, hey, I'm a better doctor,
right.
You probably, I'm good with what I've got.
That's right. I've been going to that doctor for 10 years. Why would I?
Yeah, and I seem to be healthy. I don't have any major issues, right. But if either you've got some health issues, or if maybe some things weren't picked up on, you start having little things that have a loss in trust, and or you're not getting the results that you want. Well, maybe if somebody's reaching out and just giving you great health tips and being forward leading, in that sense, you'd consider a change. Mm-hmm. All right. So, and the number of organizations that, I've talked to where they think they're doing okay. And then we get into some metrics and KPIs and just ways of thinking about IT, right? Fire prevention versus firefighting. I was on the line with a I'm going to say a financial services firm recently, and we'd be 10% more, and right now they're just getting reactive IT with no strategy.
Wow. They're seeing,
and he was just like the gentleman, the COO that I was on the line with, like you could just see his heart sink because he knows he's at risk. He knows that things aren't being done proactively. He knows he's losing productivity from his team. And then to hear that there's a different way and that it's not this, Herculean leap to be able to do that. So like just seeing that out there is, I like being able to share that there's a different way.
Yeah. What if you're only 10% more than they're overcharging or you're undercharging? I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, correct. I'd like to say that, the challenge with reactive IT is, it was the late Charlie Munger, right, Warren Buffett's business partner. He had this saying, and I'm sure I said this as well too, but you show me the incentive and I'll show you the results. Mm-hmm. And I think fundamentally, we've seen that shift to fixed rate, flat rate, either per endpoint or per seat pricing. If you're selling block hours or you're selling time and materials, like it is not in your best interest to be proactive and to get in front of problems and solve them once and for all.
Right.
It's a delicate dance of, somebody not having so many problems that they complain, but not that you put yourself out of a job. Yeah. And I don't think that I'm saying that with not thinking that people would do that in a malicious way in any way, shape, or form. I don't think there's any malice. I think every person shows up and wants to do well for the people that they serve. Mm-hmm. But I think that the structure of compensation and of goals for organizations when it's time and materials type billing is, they're at odds. Mm.
So now that you're working on the process, sales and business development, what are some of the things that you've learned, right? This is the common struggle at every MSP.
Well, I think process is king. Mm. It really is a sales process because the sales process is so long, right? Or the sales cycle is so long. You do need to have a process to be able to nurture relationships and be top of mind when a change will take place. Mm. Empirically, like in our peer group, we'll say that 10% of the companies, out there are making a change in any one given year. If you reverse math that means that a company makes an IT provider change every 10 years, mm-hmm. right? If we think about the durability of the relationships that we've got with clients and how sticky they are, I think that, could lend itself, it can lend itself to that. And so to that end, when an organization is making a change, you've got to be top of mind. Mm-hmm. But that's something that, and people buy from people they like.
Right.
Right. And they've developed a relationship with. So it's being out there, being a rainmaker, having a process, not letting things fall through the cracks. If I can, speak frankly here, when I took over the sales, marketing function, one of the first things I did was I want to reach out to every person who my former partner had conversations with. And it was a real kick in the pants when I spoke with, I'm going to say not, one or two, but I'm going to say high single digits. And they said, yeah, I remember talking to him, but I never heard from him again. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate because, 3 or 4 months ago, we made a change. Wish we would have known.
Yeah.
Like it was just like there was the opportunity.
Yeah.
If there was a shot, if you ask any of you guys ask yourselves, if there was a shot to land, 4 or 5 new clients, right? Maybe you're not going to get them all, but 4 or 5 new clients because they made a change in a year. I think a lot of MSPs would be happy with that have not figured out the sales and marketing function. Mm-hmm.
What's been the biggest surprise or aha as you're figuring out this process?
Well, I think like there was the real aha, and it's going to sound, it is going to sound so intuitive, right? But I had not really internalizing the concept that this is a process.
Mm-hmm.
Really was, and I get it's in the word, like it's in the term sales process. Right. So like this is very self-evident, right?
Should be.
But understanding that it is a process and you have to develop a process and structure and understand and map it out. And until we had really like I'll put it to you this way, and I'll relay it to, again, the people who are listening and whatnot. If you've got a PSA and you just attack that by just making changes on the fly, that very quickly will become a spaghetti mess of rules, workflows, boards. Like it all of a sudden will become difficult. Whereas if you attack it, clean sheet, what outcomes do we need to have? What boards do we need to have? What functions need to be where? It will create the guardrails and clarity for the team to be able to operate. I'm going to say it's the same thing in the same sales realm.
Mm.
Where is somebody in their journey to becoming, the next customer?
Yeah.
Right. It's really, and that's nurturing them through that journey. Because, sometimes, we sort of joke in the peer group, but it's, if you lose a deal, they're just one MSP and you want to work with them and you've identified that they'd be the right fit for you and whatnot. They fit your ideal client profile and everything. We always just look at it and say, well, they're just one MSP away from working with us.
Yeah. Yep.
Because sometimes they just don't get it, right? It's kind of like companies always seem to want cybersecurity services after they've been breached.
Mm-hmm.
But beforehand, it was an afterthought. I don't need to spend money on that. I don't need to do things properly.
Right. The least possible.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. No, I think as, an IT guy, when I moved into the sales side, it's uncomfortable. I think a lot of the outreach, a lot of the other things. But I think for a while I thought, well, the process, right? It's more just like making random calls or showing up periodic. Like, I didn't see it's a process, but none of us would run our ticket board without statuses or stages or, ways to deal with things. And the sales process is no different, right? You have stages, you have marketing qualified versus sales qualified. You have different ways you're going to nurture and engage and apply more resources based on, the level of them being qualified, based on how they want to engage and interact. And I remember thinking very similar things like, this is not like, this is like an art. It can't be any kind of process.
Well, exactly. It was more the mindset was like it was the art of sales, but and there is certainly an art to it, but it is founded in a process.
Yeah, and so it took me too long to realize there's a real
and
art.
Discipline.
Yes, there's a real art to being a really good L3. You have a lot of not only ability, but there's some real magical art in your ability to troubleshoot. But as a business, we still need to move you through different stages, maybe through different levels before we just throw the L3 at everything. And I feel like there is very much an art. You can be different levels of quality. Unfortunately, we don't call them L1 through L3 in sales, but you can have different levels of salespeople in different roles and capabilities and still very much be skill and art. But just like ticketing, there's got to be a process. We don't throw the head guy at the first download or subscribe to your email.
I love the analogy that you're bringing up, because if I'm going to parry off of that you got to think to yourself, you're getting started in sales, right? You're getting started. You're like an L1, right? And the thing is, think about how successful your L1 would be without knowledge base articles and standard operating procedures.
It's comical,
right? Like
comical, right?
Just like you are setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
But if you work with, partners or peer group or, like some sort of support structure, and you don't try and reinvent the wheel, and you stick with it, and you're diligent, not only will you get results at that L1 level, but as you grow in your maturity, L2, and then finally L3, where to your point, there's you've gained a degree of mastery of the process and taking something from prospect to new client enough times now that the art aspect is coming out, mm-hmm. and you know how to color outside the lines in a creative way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's what I would say to people who are trying to figure that out. It's we went through that process with True Methods, MSP, like just insert whichever peer group or content, like, and there's Robin Robbins out there. We've never participated in it. Like there are thought leaders in this space about business development in MSP. And I think anything is better than you trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, their world's better at it than you are when you're coming from it.
You need to crowdsource the solution.
Yeah.
It's really, this is not, this is you don't need to figure this out for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's amazing. I remember thinking, kind of being in the tech, wearing the tech hat, and then realizing, I've got to lead operations, so I need to quit troubleshooting the OS and start troubleshooting the systems and the processes. And that's what I need to be thinking about. And then there was a total different breakthrough or aha moment when I realized that you can build a sales process just like you build an operational process, and you need to apply the same. Like now, I'm not troubleshooting ticketing. I'm troubleshooting system and processes. And then when I move into sales, it's like, well, now I'm troubleshooting the customer experience. I'm troubleshooting the psychology of people. Like it's still very much a problem that needs some real work applied. And that's kind of what drew me in. It's like, if you think software is unpredictable, wait until you start dealing with people.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about like the fact that we can reduce ticket counts. Mm-hmm. Like if I talk to prospects, hey, we can reduce ticket counts and whatnot, but we can't reduce them to zero. And I'll give them some metrics around, like what we feel, that is, and what we see, for a mature IT, position and whatnot, mm-hmm. and mature IT operations. And then sometimes I'll get asked, well, why can't you make that zero? Mm-hmm. And I'll just say, because we're dealing with people. we have them in all of our businesses. Yeah. Like people just need help, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's okay. It's getting them the help that they need. And you mentioned you're dealing with the psychology of people. Like we'll talk with that with our service delivery teams. It's in some senses, especially if you're frontline. So if you're customer experience or your service desk, you really are like a technology psychologist. Mm-hmm. You got to think like this tech is not working for this person at this moment. They've called you because they probably can't do what they need to, mm-hmm. right? Like if it was just an error box that popped up and they clicked OK and they could continue doing their work, you probably wouldn't hear from them, right? Like it's because there's a block that in many cases that's creating a degree of anxiety or frustration because they can't achieve what they need to, and they've got people that they're responsible to getting results for within the organization.
Yeah.
So, sometimes a lot of that I find is just it's troubleshooting the person
right.
while you make the tech challenge go away.
Yeah.
And then empowering them, frankly, empowering them potentially, maybe there's a learning opportunity there. Hey, let me show you how. Would you like to know what to look for? And invite them and engage them to I'm going to say level up their tech knowledge, I'm going to say in a non-technical person way, like friendly way.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I think most of us view this as close the ticket, fix the tech issue, not teach the person.
Yeah, how about help the person?
Right. You call it help.
Service desk, help desk.
Right. You call it help desk for a reason. Yeah.
Yeah. Help the person. I mean, just to parry on to that, like back in my independent consulting days, I was looking after a number of automotive dealerships. Mm-hmm. So, this is automotive retail, lots of people, and there was a parts manager. And I remember, and this is, I'm going way back. I'm going to date myself now. People are going to be, this is like Windows XP days. Okay.
Remember those days?
Yeah. And we had set up a parts manager who's like a real gruff, blue collar kind of guy. And he was the kind of guy that he'd be tearing a strip off of some of his employees. Like if you'd hear the yelling and the shouting, sometimes you'd be like, oh boy, I'm next in line to go talk to him about something. And I remember, we set him up with multiple monitors, docking station, so that he could have this ERP up on multiple screens and be more effective. And at first he was like not a believer in it. And then he had it, and it was like air conditioning in the car for the first time. He was just like, oh, this is great. I can cross-reference things. I mean, I'll joke and say like a person should never be limited by the number of pixels they've got on their screen, right? Anyways, look, it was XP, so it would forget its monitor settings. It would all mess up, and he would get so frustrated when that would happen. And I just remember over time teaching him where to look and how to go, and like the amount of pride that I had when I got a call. I was driving in the car one day, and he's like, "This damn thing has done it again," and and he's frustrated, and he says, "I need you to get in here right now," right? And I'm like, "Okay, just let's walk through this." And he says, "No, wait. Okay, I figured it out. I'm all good. Thank you so much again." And every time and he could be tearing a strip off somebody, and I'd show up at his door, and then his demeanor would just change. He was smiling because I empowered him to use this tool that he used to feel frustrated by. Yeah. But now he saw that it was adding so much value, making him more productive, making his life better, right? And the fact that he knew how to sort of fix little things on his own went a long way. And we still want to know about those things. But look, sometimes tech is just tech. It's just reboot the damn thing and it'll be fine.
That's right.
Like, pull the power to the power supply. Some bad powers come down and locked up the power supply. Just do that, plug it back in, and boy, you're good again, right? So there's just that stuff that comes up. So
the secret of tech support.
Yeah, exactly. When in doubt, reboot.
That's right. Well, I wanted to switch gears, Matthew. What's the biggest lesson you feel like you've learned over all your years?
Oh, that's a deep one. I would say I don't know if I want to necessarily say that it's a lesson, but I would say that it's something that has become evident, which is the more value you create, the larger and wider of an impact you can have. And, I'll remind, our team when we're having our huddles and whatnot, like the impact that you can have on the people that you serve and people's lives and the organizations we serve is wide. If I think about the amount of revenue we protect, right? I'm going to say we're into the billion, at least, in terms of if I was to look at the total revenue of all the clients that we support. Yeah. If I look at their top line revenue and was to add them up, and it's like, you're dealing with that person that's maybe in Q&A at a manufacturing department. And so you're helping that company build that widget and build a product and make sure that it's coming out properly. But if you do it in a human way, and if you make their day a better day, they tend to interact in a better way with their team. And when they go home, the interaction they have with their friends and family is better. Like it's just the knock-on effect. It's like dropping the pebble and watching the ripples. Like the impact we have on people's lives is immense, and not to forget that, and that sometimes people are having a bad day, and you can help turn that around for them. Yeah, it's a wonderful lesson there. Yeah. So, and it's awesome we get to see it.
Yeah. If you could do one thing over or differently, what would that be?
It's a broader statement, but I think this comes from the startup world, but it's like just fail faster. Fail faster. I know that, and this comes into behavioral finance as well too. people will hold on to their losers longer than they should, and they'll sell their winners sooner than they should. It's the same thing. Just, I think that there was a period of time with that associate model where we looked at it and said, this is probably not the path forward to grow in the way that we want to. Yet we continued on. And rather than stepping back and doing a rethink of, okay, how would we approach this differently? And I'm going to say, and I use I'm using the broad term because it applies in so many different ways. Say the partnership that went on longer than maybe it needed to, right? But you always want to give people a chance. You always want to make sure you've done your due diligence and whatnot. And I'm going to say that would be team members that maybe weren't a fit in the long run. It's just, if your gut's telling you something, just your gut's probably right.
Yeah.
Don't try and out engineer or outthink it or think that you're going to be able to pivot that. Like, in general, it's your gut's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just fail fast, because what you can't get is more time.
Yeah. Well said. What's your biggest, a lot of folks listening may be able to help. What's your biggest challenge currently? What do you see as your biggest next stage or challenge you need to try to understand?
In terms of challenge, look, we have certainly done leaps and bounds in terms of developing a sales process and having a more predictable stream of revenue, or of new business, I should say. But I still want to continue growing that, and I still need to refine that. I'm going to say it's, that is still, there's a degree of flux there. And in general, I'm going to say that I think the other challenge, which is going to become larger, is, me as a leader. I'm having to grow. If we were to double, triple, quadruple in size, I'm sure I'm going to have to step it up. And so is my leadership team and the people within the organization. So how do I help them grow? How do I grow? And like I'm going to say, in the with the path of least resistance in mind, right?
Right.
I think is the point. Not having to beat your head against the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. How do I grow is the question, right?
And that's like, if I think about, like, and I want to attribute a lot of our success to, the dynamic that, my director of operations and I have got. If you are familiar with EOS, and they've got the visionary and integrator roles, like, I'm the visionary, she's the integrator. And so, that worked well. My former business partner and I were both more visionaries.
Yeah.
So just, using that framework, when I was introduced to EOS, that was really, there was a big aha moment there. So having a really strong team and knowing who's in the right seat is critical. And focusing on culture has been critical. So just continuing down that path and refining that as we go, I think it's just going to be, I wouldn't say the challenge, but it's just, we know that's what we're going to have to take on as we grow.
What are you most looking forward to? There's all kinds of, not only challenge, but a lot of change in the industry, all sorts of things going on. What are you most looking forward to now?
I'm looking forward to a lot of the opportunity that exists out there. And I want to put this in context. A lot of organizations are becoming more and more aware of just, the risks that they carry, because IT used to be, I don't want to say an afterthought, but it was this ancillary component that, or element of a business that if the computers were down, people could still work. Nowadays, that's not really an option. And I'll tell, prospects, especially ones that had like really brick and mortar, old school, things used to be paper records, etc. And I'll say to them, like the thing is, you moved over to tech. Can we all agree that technologies help, improve your business, make it more efficient? You don't have double entry errors, just all that kind of fun stuff. And let alone, if you think about the protection you've got now, offsite backups of all your records, like, if there's a fire, flood, theft, like you can get up and running again if you got the right business continuity and disaster recovery plan in place. Mm-hmm. You had paper records. I mean, you weren't making duplicates and triplicates and putting them in a van and driving them across the city to a secure storage facility. Like that wasn't happening. Right. So 10 steps forward, the 2 steps back are, now that it's digitized, the Nigerian prince that all emails you and I and did some years ago, mm-hmm. telling us that we, got the inheritance and ready to go. The Nigerian prince wasn't hacking your paper records. That's right. But he can hack your digital ones. Mm-hmm. So 10 steps forward, 2 steps back. Mm-hmm. Now we have different risks. Yeah. We've mitigated some. Now we have new ones. We gotta manage those risks effectively, mm-hmm. and that takes a degree of investment. And I think, as the cybersecurity landscape has evolved, and people are seeing and hearing from either their business partners or people in their business community, the challenges that companies have had, if they've had a breach or a significant incident, it's brought that awareness where they're much more aware and thinking about how to handle, how they should be handling that and what level of risk they're willing to bear. Mm. So I look at that as opportunity because it's, you can finally say, yes, finally you guys are ready to have a serious conversation. You can't just, slough us off.
Right. Well, speaking of that, you've made a substantial investment in cybersecurity. I won't even try, but if you can share some of the letters you have now. Good morning.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. No, like as part of my journey, and looking at just where the market was going, I invested into, pursuing my CISSP mm-hmm. Designation, CISM, like CISM, C-Risk, and certified CISO designations. And I actually want to credit that because, I've been, security's been part of IT for quite some time. And there's an element of that, like the clients that we work with, there's a need for cybersecurity and just security overall in their business. But I would say that those designations really taught me and helped me find the language for talking about risk. Mm. Talking about risk, right? I mean, I think as technologists, one thing that and I'm guilty of this, I used to do this, mm-hmm. you get excited about the tech rather than the business results the business needs to get and how tech can empower that. Mm-hmm. And so now, it's given me and I'm able to start conversations or have conversations with business leaders where we focus on risk and business outcome. And then we're able to marry, a technical solution or a security solution to get the outcome that they're looking for. Like it's funny, like, and, if I'm talking with a prospective client and sometimes we'll get into discussion around, like what their data protection looks like. And then, you'll get a question like, they'll say, well, what backup should I have? And I'll say, whoa, we got to hold your horses. We got to back this up a little bit. Mm-hmm. We have to talk about what results the business needs to get. Mm-hmm. So let's look at your recovery time objective. Let's look at your recovery point objective. Let's look at your recovery service level. Yeah. Have you thought about that? Has anybody talked to you about that? Mm-hmm. All right. How much data are you willing to lose? Yeah. How long can you be down for? What needs to be up and when? Mm-hmm. Your production line of business, ERP, whatever, manufacturer resource planning, whatever is driving your business, that critical system needs to be up first. Mm-hmm. The archival system, probably we could leave that down in the event of an emergency. Mm-hmm. Has anybody talked about that? Because once we've got that, then we can talk about what backup solution you should have or data protection solution you should have. Yeah. So we're approaching it, putting the cart before the horse.
Yeah, not just because we have a shiny, cool tech thing to sell.
Yeah,
Right.
And yet, you go look at the Verizon data breach incident report, and how are companies getting popped? It's credential theft, phishing, and vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's that? End user training, proper email filtering, and DNS protection, things like that to try and mitigate that, and patching.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the latest, greatest,
right,
shiny cybersecurity tool.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just good IT hygiene.
Fundamental.
Yeah, just good IT hygiene, right?
Yeah.
But the I think, and this is what I'll talk to prospective clients about, is that's fire prevention. Because to get the outcomes you want, you need to focus on preventing those things from happening.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a structure. Your provider needs to have structure and a process and whatnot. If otherwise, you're just reacting.
Mm-hmm.
Your team isn't trained. If there's no process to manage patching and cross-check it and make sure that's being done, you're likely carrying risk that you don't know about. And credential theft, your team needs to be trained.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time they got some cybersecurity training?
Mm-hmm.
Or a phishing simulation sent their way, to know that John in accounting seems to always be clicking on these links, and providing his password.
Yeah. Got to make sure
Right?
I log in.
Like, we got to make sure John understands.
Right.
And we've had clients. It's funny. I can think about a scenario that happened. It's happened with clients, and it's the people who claim to be experts in that. I'm going to say, like, the engineers, the software developers, the guys who, I'm technically oriented. I'd never do anything silly.
Right.
You'd be surprised the number of those guys who are clicking on links and providing their credentials.
Yeah.
Because it looked like it came from the CEO, and you've been able to fake them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, and that's why, by the way, we took away your global admin rights to the 365 tenant.
Right.
Right? Like, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
As they pound their chest and get frustrated. But it's like, look, it's just, this is not the way you run mature IT operations.
Yeah.
Right? And improve your cybersecurity posture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there if you had to recommend one book, what would that be?
Oh boy. That's a big one, because it depends on what you're trying to solve for and what you want to learn. I would say, okay. You need to ask me about, like, which 5 books I'd recommend.
Right.
But if there's one, I would probably lend itself first to traction, right, or scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about this from the perspective of, I'm going to say, growing MSPs, because most likely, and I'm going to say I have a Bachelor of Commerce in finance and IT. But it's one thing to have the theory. It's another thing to actually run and build a business and manage all those functions and create the structure necessary. So I would say having that structure in place, having the rhythm and the discipline in place, I would say, that you need to get first. That would be the first thing I'd want to start with. After that, it would be, investing into sales culture, like sales training, culture, etc. And getting either that training or, reading those sales books and, culture. I'm thinking about, like, extreme ownership, for example. Mm-hmm. Having the team go through that and book club it.
Mm. Jocko Willink.
Yeah.
It's good book.
Yeah.
Great recommendations.
Yeah. There's a ton out there, man.
Right. It's a hard question to answer, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just, where do you start?
Yeah.
Right. Like, what, like, when you ask that, what one book, it's like, what one book would have the widest degree of impact on the most number of people based on where they're at?
Mm-hmm.
So
I
tried to answer that for you.
Let me ask that slightly differently then. Also, what's the What's the book that you feel like has had the biggest impact on you?
Oh, that's another loaded question as well too. I would say the one book that's had the biggest impact on me, and I'm going to forget the title and butcher this a little bit, but it's David Sandler, and it was like, you can't teach a kid to ride a bike via a book or something to that
At a seminar.
To that extent. Yeah.
Can't teach a kid to write a book at a seminar.
Yeah.
Yeah. David Sandler.
Yeah. Like, it's just the mindset and the frame around sales and business development.
Yeah.
And a system and a process.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say it's in all of the sales training I have done, whether it be via peer groups or anything like that, Sandler seems to have, they all feel like they've all grown out of Sandler.
Yeah.
And the Sandler sales system. So, having that insight, I think is critical, at least on the biz dev side. And look, that was my biggest challenges taking on the business. It was, partner's no longer here. I have to buy him out. That means we've got to make the money.
Yeah.
We've organically grown over time. So.
Mm. For those that are listening, you've obviously learned so much. Is there anything you would give? And what I mean by that is, like, if they're going through something, is there some way you would help or be willing to help another MSP?
Certainly. I mean, I think about another peer group that I'm a member of that's local in our region here, and there's a gentleman that was former MSP that's pivoted to MSSP, and go out for lunch and talk about challenges. I mean, in our peer group, even though I'm going to call them, like you've heard the term frenemies, right? Like, we serve the same market, but we don't bump into each other that often in the market. So technically we're competing, but we're not really competing in our market because fortunately we're in a really large market. I've reached out and called and said, hey, I bumped into your client. They look like they're looking. Just, pay it forward.
Yeah.
Especially if you know that they deliver a great result.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just need their arms wrapped around them.
Mm.
And so, I'm going to say, just leaving I guess, I would say leaving the mindset of scarcity at the door.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot to go around if you've built a mature MSP.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be as cutthroat as people like to be, or that scarcity mindset.
Very true. Is there anything you would ask for all the folks that are watching or listening? Is there one challenge or just some other thing that you'd love to hear from somebody about, or opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be for we're 21 people in size. We're getting to that point where we're going to start, I'm going to say, crossing some critical junctions where we have gone from a company where there have been people in roles where they're having to wear multiple hats, so shared roles, to dedicated roles. And for those who have gone through that process where they've got dedicated roles and they've made that next step, from a leadership perspective to the business leaders, like, what had to change for them in order to be able to run, I'm going to say, an organization as they started installing mid-level management. So what challenges they run into? What do they wish they would have done differently?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a peer who recently exited, and was acquired, and they're in a roll-up, and I asked him, like, what would you have done differently? They were about 60 people by the time that he exited, but they started just like us size-wise. I'd like to say that we're, 4 or 5 years behind them. And I asked him, so what would you have done differently? He says, I would have doubled down on sales way earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have taken the hit on profitability to invest more in sales, because that would have had a bigger impact.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. Like, I would ask those people, what would you have done differently? Knowing what you know now, but when you were at, our size.
Wonderful question.
Yeah.
How can folks
Learn from others, man? It's really simple. Learn from others. Don't reinvent the wheel. No egos here.
I love that. Matthew, how can folks find you? What's the best way to connect with you?
Sure. I mean, like LinkedIn, I'm going to say is probably the easiest way to reach out and connect, and find me on there. Call into our line. I mean, we can provide contact details for me after the fact.
Okay.
Email. I just don't want to get signed up to a million spam lists.
Sure.
We publish my email, but I have no problem. If somebody wants to reach out over email, happy to converse that way. Pick up the phone, jump on a Zoom call, LinkedIn, smoke signals, whatever makes sense.
That's amazing. Make sure to take Matthew up on that offer. Matthew, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the time, energy, and candor that you brought to this. And thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset.
Yeah, Damien, I really appreciate that. And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the opportunity and the ability to share these stories with your listeners. So thank you.